We're going to talk about zoning issues, medical marijuana dispensaries, and new housing infill. And I will do the same things James did. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to comment, you can come up now. Okay, we're going to talk about, I'm sorry. Tonight we have James Bonsall, Andrew Clark, Tammy Stickley, Marilyn Hanrahan. Brandon Blair is absent. Okay. In the past, we have talked about medical marijuana dispensaries. I did speak with Jerry Stoker about this, and there are a couple of ways we can handle this. What we want to do is get this organized before people can open dispensaries. We can either...
Marilyn, do you know the date, like when they can do that?
I'm sorry?
Do you know when they can do that?
No, it's going to take, they're still working on it. I don't have a date.
Yeah, the state of Ohio, I think they still have, like the administrative side of it, they have until like next May or next March to come up with rules, the spring, come up with rules for how the medical marijuana is actually, like how the regulations are going to work, how that's all going to work. So yes, there's still TBD, she said.
We had talked about this at our last meeting, and we had talked about going into our zoning and putting it under retail Class C, so we can have no dispensaries until we see how the government is going to decide that they're going to proceed with those. When I was speaking to Mr. Stoker, he suggested that we look at moratorium, and then we can put a time limit on it. And that would be the better way to do things, is with the moratorium. He suggested 6 months. I'd say at least a year or something, because we don't know how slow anything's going to roll. And all this would do is would stop it from going in anywhere, and then we can sit down and decide where we want it in our zoning.
Do we do that by an amendment?
I'm sorry.
Do we do that via an amendment or ordinance, resolution?
Yeah,
How do we do
it would just be, well, I'll let Mr. Gary, but I mean, in the past, how the council have done stuff like, have done items like this is they just have an ordinance that puts a temporary moratorium over for whatever zoning thing that was. But Mr. Gary, please, as a former law director, very much experienced, he can help say a lot more than I could.
I'm glad you showed up.
A moratorium would generally be done by ordinance. There have been some done by other political subdivisions in the state in response to this medical marijuana enactment. But I think Mr. Bonsall's right. There's a period of rulemaking that's occurring. I don't know whether we need a moratorium now, but like I said, some other political subdivisions have enacted them. So if you want one, we can draw one. We just need direction as to how long.
Yeah, I think our question is how do we proceed with doing something like that if we chose to do it?
Just ask for the ordinance and then discuss it at council meeting and then ordain it or not.
Okay, thank you.
And in order to pass an ordinance, we'll need to know the length of the moratorium. I think one of the townships in Butler County, and I can't remember if it's Liberty or Westchester, has passed one, I think. And then there's some other, like I said, I can't say I've done any kind of study about how many or where, but I've just read some stuff.
Thank you.
In other words, we wouldn't be the Lone Ranger.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Say something. I'm not officially on the committee, but I I like the idea of the moratorium and doing it for a year, just because, 6 months would put us maybe at the end of the spring, but that would give some time to see how it actually works once they've got the rules in place and see if it's something we would want to allow in our community anywhere. So I think having that additional time to allow it to play out and see it in other communities and how it works type thing. So I would support a year.
Yeah, and I actually agree. Well, I agree with the Mr. Clark, and that a moratorium would probably, in my opinion, would be the best route. And I actually think that we should do this moratorium, as soon as possible. Working in our normal course of action, only because I want to make sure that property owners and people that are potential property owners in the city of Norwood, that, I want to make sure the word is out now that, the city council is strongly looking at this, because I wouldn't want somebody to buy a property in the city of Norwood thinking that they're going to put marijuana dispensary in there, and then find out later that that's not going to work, and then they might be out some of the money or some of the value that they thought they were going to get from the property. So I don't think it hurts to start early and start now on getting this done, and allowing the public to have input, especially I know the rulemaking won't be done until spring, but like I said, I as a property owner, if I couldn't do what I thought I could do with my property, it would be kind of frustrating. So I think it'd be good to get the word out now.
Okay, so we want to get an ordinance for that for 1 year? Agree on that? Okay. The other issue would be our zoning issues we've been talking about for a while. The front yard play sets went in front of the Planning Commission, and we can go back. They tabled it, and we could go back and talk to them. I was unable to make that meeting because I was at the emergency management meeting with the state of Ohio. They weren't thrilled with the way it was written. I did speak with Mr. Stoker on that and explain what we wanted and ask him if he would write it so it was done correctly and the way he liked it. And he said he would do that, so he is working on that. I explained just what we wanted. We don't want, we're not opposed to somebody taking their baby's swing in the front yard or a little pool when their kid wants to swim. We don't want big structures out there. And so he's going to work on that for us. We talked about the same thing with the backyard blacktop. We discussed people who can blacktop their entire backyards. This is done for one reason usually, and that's only for parking. And since the city has worked for quite a while for home ownership, trying to bring homeowners in, it does, it's going to stay then, or it's more likely to stay rental property in that case. And I don't want to buy a house, and then my next door neighbor decides they're going to blacktop the entire backyard, and I'm living next to a parking lot. So he is going to look into that also and get back with me. The other one we spoke about was the front yard parking pads, which we have all discussed. He seems to feel that the law used to be you could not park in your front. You had to go all the way to the back. Your driveway had to go all the way to the back, and not all properties can do that. And people want to get off the street. He felt like people ought to be able to park. My thought was 10 feet was wide enough. 20 feet, that's pretty wide in front of your house. And that scenario will come up in a minute when we talk about the new housing infill on a house that somebody was looking to build over on Ashland. So he would like to know what the rationale is of why we don't like having 20 foot of driveway or parking pad in front of a house. And so he would like us to come up with some rationale for that. Besides, we don't like it.
So, I hate saying this, but it probably is good for a legislative body to come up with good, I guess, policy objectives before they decide to implement a policy. And so I don't disagree with the thought behind that. And I'm telling you, I'm sure we can come up with some good reasons why we don't want parking lots in the front yard, basically, parking pads in the front yard, even though they are, they're slightly restricted. But there's a couple of examples that I've just seen in the past couple of weeks when I've been walking around the city that where you have parking. I mean, I don't know if it might be a more historic parking, not just recently when they started allowing it, but there are parking lots. Basically, the driveway comes right up to in front of the house, and it just doesn't look great. It doesn't give a good feel to the neighborhood. And these are more emotional things that I'm feeling here, but I'm sure there are some studies that have been shown. I'm sure there are other objectives that we could come up with, or things that we can come up with that could more objectively show that. So if we have to come up with that, I think it's fine. I know that we do have a council person here, I guess, that lives next to one. Not that that person might be concerned specifically about that one, but might have some experiences with what other residents might deal with when there's a parking pad in the front yard.
To be honest, I mean, really, it doesn't affect me personally. I can understand why people might not like it, and for any other reason, I would think that just from the aesthetics aspect of it, it just isn't pleasant. Nobody wants to see a car parked in front of the front of the house. And I would say aesthetics is a common reason why legislative bodies pass laws that they do. If it's not pleasant to look at, that's a good reason to do that.
And I think it encourages more rental properties, additional parking, off-street parking, even though it's in the front of the house. I think it just, I think we're trying to encourage more owner-occupied dwellings in this city, and I think that is just another way to encourage additional rental properties.
I agree. Thank you. So do we agree we want to move forward with getting this changed back to the 10 feet?
Marilyn, when did it change from 20? When did it change from 10 to 20?
I think it was last year, the year before.
Did they cite reasons on why they...
Well, I had originally heard it was because people who lived in South Norwood, a lot of them, there's limited parking. But then when you actually read the ordinance, you can only cover so much of your lot, so it wouldn't apply to them anyway. Because their lots are too small. So he just thought that, a lot of people didn't want to park in the backyard, or they didn't have the room to go to the backyard.
Yeah, and I mean,
And I would agree. I think that you're looking at Clinty Avenue, which has quite a bit of rental. We don't want to see I don't want to see a cement city there.
Yeah, and I mean, and it says here, it's 1153.20D. It says in an R district, in an R district, parking in the front yard setback shall be permitted on a driveway no greater than 20 feet in width and occupying no more than 25% of the front yard setback. So, in Blue Ash, that sounds about right. But when you're looking down Floral Avenue and you're looking at all these beautiful homes, just see cars in front of all of these, especially if you allow an actual parking spot in front of the homes, not just the driveway. But to encourage that to even more in just a historic, really, in my opinion, historic districts that we have here, gorgeous districts. I think that could be of concern, and I am happy to hear from Council Person Stickley that aesthetics could be a reason, because I've heard from residents about this, and I think it is a concern. So, yes, I think we should move forward.
Okay, we'll go ahead with that. Okay, the last thing we have is for new housing infill. I got a call about a house that somebody had put in an application to build, and it was a suburban house. It had 28 feet of garage in the front of the house, like you would see out in Westchester or wherever. And I'm surprised because I thought Mr. Brown was going to be here to discuss this tonight, so we may put this off till the next meeting. He wanted to talk about putting rules and regulations on new houses that are being built so that they work with the neighborhood. And I'm just going to suggest that he had the paperwork that he was going to discuss, so I'm just going to suggest we put this off till the next meeting when Mr. Brown can attend. Is that okay with everyone? If you, yes,
Yeah.
you read some of the.
I did. So Mr. Brown did send me this document. I wish I wish it would have got sent to everybody, but I did read it over the weekend, and the document is pretty clear. I mean, we don't really have a lot of development standards, if you will, when it comes to some of the things that it talks about. But I mean, it talks really about where how a yard is set out, or how far back the houses have to be, which we do have that, but with the way that our current code is, and a couple of years ago we redid how the commercial spaces have to look. So there's actually quite a bit of information about how a building has to be situated on a corner and how it has to be situated on a street. And you can't just have a blank wall. Like, you've got to have some recesses or do some things to the building to make it, more appealing, aesthetically. And so right now, apparently, we can just build basically, I think we can just build a Westchester style house and just plop it right in the middle of, like I said, some of our historic districts. And I'm so glad that our chairperson brought this up, because I do think that we should at least look at this and let residents kind of get feedback on this once they realize what truly could be built next to them, especially now that home values in Norwood are increasing so much that it actually is starting to make sense in certain areas of the city for new construction. And that new construction, like I said, very much could look like some of these cookie cutter neighborhoods in other communities that some people prefer, but a lot of people that I hear from that live in the city of Norwood, they live here for a reason, and it's because of the character. So yeah, I'm really happy that we're looking at this, and I'm looking forward to Mr. Brown coming and talking to us in a few weeks or whatever.
Is there anything else? Okay. I move that we adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.